So, the Disney Channel is something I've been fascinated with for some time now. Not only because it was my favorite cable channel to watch growing up, but also because of what a cultural touchstone it was for the turn of the 21st century. To a certain degree, it even feels weird to use the past tense when referring to the Disney Channel, since I think we all just assumed it would last forever, even if we stopped watching. It really seems like the Disney Channel is dead and dusted now, if not officially by canning the channel itself, which technically is the case for all the international channels, then by the pure fact that they only show things made originally for Disney Plus on there now. While there is still some original programming and even movies coming out, I would argue that the Disney Channel era of cable television is officially over. There have been many videos about the history of Disney Channel and what killed the Disney Channel, which are all videos I recommend you watch. But today I want to talk about what was actually on Disney Channel, at least from a movie perspective. I would say Disney Channel original movies, or DCOMs, which is how we'll be referring to them, are what was most popular and what people would remember the most from the channel. Most made-for-TV movies have a certain reputation about them, which causes most of them not to be well remembered. But there are many DCOMs which have not only stood the test of time, but were also huge deals when they aired, and went on to define a generation. Although, to be completely transparent, most of them did not. While many people will remember a large chunk of the movies we're about to discuss today, most of them are pretty unimportant and are only really being discussed for the sake of completionism. So today, we are going to be watching and ranking every Disney Channel original movie, all 115 of them, right here, right now. Something I want to clarify going forward is what actually qualifies as a DCOM. I've been going off the DCOM Wikipedia page for this entire video, which has definitely been a point of contention for the DCOM watching community. This topic has been pretty well published, but in case anyone's unaware, I'll attempt to give a brief recap. Technically, the first ever DCOM is a movie called Northern Lights. That's what Wikipedia used to say, and that's what we all agreed on at first. That is, until 2016, when Disney Channel did a promotional for the 100th DCOM by airing all 99 previous movies on the Disney Channel for 4 days straight. They really did air every single DCOM on the Disney Channel in 2016, leading up to the movie Adventures in Babysitting. Every DCOM except Northern Lights. Fans were confused as to why Northern Lights was not included, but a movie that wasn't considered a DCOM, Sharpay's Fabulous Adventure, was on there. So I think what the Disney Channel thought would be a smart move was to boot out Northern Lights, which is a movie that was most likely not to be remembered, and include Sharpay's Fabulous Adventure, a movie a lot more people would remember. And I think they thought no one would notice. Well, people noticed. So this leaves me in a tricky situation, because I could continue to ignorantly keep this straight-to-DVD movie in my ranking and leave out the perfectly fine DCOM just because of this stupid numbers game Disney Channel is playing with its viewers, but in reality that would cause me too much strife and I really don't want to get in fights with people about this in the comments, so for the sake of my own sanity, we are going exclusively off of the Wikipedia list of DCOMs. That's it. Disney Plus also confuses this further, but we'll get there when we get there. So to address the Sharpay's Fabulous Adventure is not a DCOM thing, going forwards, we need to remember that a DCOM is a movie that was officially made for and by the Disney Channel network, which does not include movies with theatrical releases or movies that were made for other networks, along with any other exceptions. I could never mention every single movie that aired on Disney Channel that is not a DCOM because there are just way too many, but if there's one that I feel many might notice is absent, then I'll give it a mention in between reviews. Speaking of reviews, I'm going to try my best to be brief but thorough since we have over 100 movies to get through. The beginning of the list was an absolute uphill battle to get through, since in the year 2000 alone, Disney Channel released a new movie for every single month. That's 12 movies in 1 year. With each year, that number gets lower and lower until we just get to one movie coming out in 2013, which never happens again, but it's still impressive to see the steep decline of movies coming out throughout the 2010s. I won't complain, however, since 100 movies or so is already quite enough for me to be getting through. I'm also going to be splitting up the movies into the different eras of the Disney Channel, which is also determined by the marketing. Disney Channel fans have neatly divided the eras based on the bumpers used in between programming, which went through many evolutions over time. These eras are the Zoog Disney era, the Bounce era, the Ribbon era, the Rounded Square era, the Glass era, the Social Media Age, and the Item Age. I debated whether it was a good idea to divide these movies up this way, since the films made in each era aren't exactly proportional to how important each era was. For example, the 12 movies in 1 year that I mentioned, those are all from the Zoog Disney era, which has a whopping 41 movies in it. And while it could be argued, I think many would agree that the Ribbon era was the most popular moment in Disney Channel's history. Not the best moment, just the most popular from a numbers perspective. But there are only 11 movies in that era. So maybe this isn't the best way to divide things up, but it's the way I'm gonna do things, so the passage of time can feel more concrete. Okay, I think it's finally time to start watching movies, so let's get into it. We have a long road ahead.
It's the right time for a zoog movie, yeah. The right time for a zoog movie. It's the right time for a zoog movie, yeah. The right time for a zoog movie.
I realize that these eras of the Disney Channel may not be well defined in people's minds, so allow me to do a brief explanation of these once we get to each one. The next one isn't going to be for a very long time, and they're going to be all back to each other once we get to that point, so just prepare yourself for that. The Zoog Disney era gets its name from the titular characters called zoogs. They were described as these little bits and bytes that live in between the internet and your cable television, basically like little electrical beings, and they all had their own names, and they even had a little rap song that they would sing.
My name's Joe, I'm a zoog, got a place just for you.
They had these cute little, very 90s looking sprite animations in the beginning, and then in the final year of the Zoog Disney era, they got CGI rebrands, and they look a lot more tween oriented and less for children. It's very funny to think that a little bit under half of this list is even before the Disney Wand IDs come to exist, because that doesn't happen until 2002, in the next era. Same thing with the classic Disney Channel logo that most people know about. This moment was definitely a moment of transition in Disney Channel's history. They had just done the rebrand where they dropped the and were just Disney Channel, and they had gone from being a premium channel only like HBO to being available for free on most larger cable packages. This happened on April 6th, 1997, by the way, so we'll only be talking about movies that happened after that, because that's when the rebrand happened, and that's when the movies officially started being called DCOMs. There are plenty of movies that were made before the Disney Channel rebrand in 97, and those movies were called Disney Channel premiere films, and that's the only reason why we're not talking about them today. Again, 100% of the basis on what a DCOM is based on what Disney Channel says is a DCOM. Because Disney Channel to its core is a masterclass in marketing. And that'll become the most evident after this section of the video. I think the main reason why the Zoog Disney era has the largest amount of movies in it is because the channel was desperate for its own original content. This is also the first time that they were incorporating ad breaks into their programming. Of course, not real ads, only ads for other Disney products. And we're no longer showing stuff from the Disney Vault, like cartoons and lower level Disney movies. While they still do that to this day, they were mainly focused on making their own content, and especially at this time, it was a lot more family-oriented. While technology was moving fast, prefaced by the fact that the Zoog Disney era had its own website called like zoog.com, where you could do a bunch of internet stuff, only as good as 90s internet stuff on the website could be. I'm pretty sure the average household only really had about 1 to 2 televisions still, and differentiated itself from HBO by only providing stuff that the whole family could watch. So a lot of these early movies aren't going to have that teen flair that we all know and love from the Disney Channel. So a lot of these movies are testing the waters and seeing what kind of movies audiences would like, and then the next eras are them just like absolutely beating that horse to the ground. And I think it'll be interesting to note when exactly that dead horse stops spitting out money. But before we get there, we have to cover Disney Channel's early beginnings. So without further hesitation, let's just get into our first movie.
I'll take my beans, my magic beans. Who's got the beans? We need some beans. I love the beans.
You can't rattle me.
Into the woods at Grandma's house.
Look, I'm proud of my part, okay? The New York Times call me winningly naive.
Into the woods, into the woods.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch this movie when I first did my rewatch. Since the movie wasn't on Disney Plus, and I knew there were debates on which early DCOMs were actually considered DCOMs, I just assumed this one didn't count. But this was before they made the remake, and before I fell into the trenches of my Disney bumper obsession, so I've corrected the mistake now. I went back and I watched this movie, so I'm fully up to date on the timeline. Honestly, it was just out of pure laziness. 114 movies sounds a lot better than 115, but here we are. Under Wraps is about a group of middle schoolers who find a resurrected mummy in the basement of a recently deceased town weirdo, and now must take care of him and return him to his tomb before he turns to dust. This movie is a very cute and fun watch for Halloween time, and again, sadly it's not on Disney Plus, so I don't know how easily I'd recommend it to people, although I will be linking, some very important sources in the description below. You can tell this is more of a family-friendly film and less of a movie for babies because there's a gun in it and there's like sex references, which I was not used to when watching DCOMs, trust me. So I do think it's a very fun Halloween watch. The voice actor who plays Patrick in SpongeBob is in this movie very briefly, and he's actually the voice of the mummy. So that's a pretty cool detail, especially since this movie came out before SpongeBob existed. Isn't that fun to think about? Previously, I did have beef with this movie being on the list, but it's actually a much better start than the next film we're going to talk about, so I've made my peace with it. Also, the mom in this movie, you better get used to seeing her because she's in like a bajillion other DCOMs after this, I swear. She was like DCOM mom queen. So yeah, I recommend you watch this movie if you're really into kind of lighthearted children's spooky Halloween movies. This is a good one to add to the list if you can find it. Again, check the description of this video. It'll be fun to compare this movie to the 2021 sequel, but that's a very long time from now, so we'll come back around to this movie at the end of the video. This is at the top of the ranking, obviously, right now, but I feel like this will end up more in the middle and at the bottom. It's not really offensive, I don't mind it, but it's not the best movie I've ever seen or anything. Which, there definitely are some of those on this list. You guys get ready for that. So yeah, this was a great start to the list. Can't wait to watch the next movie.
We got a Mr. Do here. I got a call for a Mr. Do.
Melvin Do?
Nah, Scooby.
You Lucky Dog is definitely an odd movie on the list. While it's clearly a family-friendly movie, the story's lack of a child protagonist and the lengthy courtroom drama at the end is obviously not in DCOM nature, and it's clear to see when watching. Again, this feels like the older style of the Disney Channel premiere films, since this movie feels like it hasn't quite embraced being entirely for kids, but it still feels like it's trying to appeal to families as a whole. I talk about this in my Sweet Life on Deck video, but Disney Channel slowly over time realized who their main audience was and where the money was at, so this kind of programming became very quickly outdated, and the movies very quickly start to reflect that. The DCOMs definitely moved faster than the TV shows did, most likely because of the sheer amount of movies they were making during their peak moments of transition, which is the Zoog Disney era. So, movies like this were made under the assumption that adults were still watching the movie alongside their kids. But I have no idea how any adult could ever find this movie enjoyable because it absolutely sucks eggs. At the time of me recording this, it's been quite a while since I've watched this movie, since it was the first one I watched, so all I can tell you is that it has a very formulaic plot and some very absurd details. You Lucky Dog is about a man who, at a young age, finds out he can talk to dogs. Over time, he loses this ability, yet still continues to profit off of it, until an eccentric millionaire dies and leaves all of his fortune to his dog. This dog whisperer, I cannot remember his name. I just realized I didn't write his name at all during this list. Oh my god. The dog whisperer is now magically able to speak to this man's dog after over a decade of not being able to, and is tasked with interpreting what the dog wants to spend his fortune on, all while the deceased man's relatives attempt to get their cheated inheritance back. Also, there's a romance, I'm pretty sure. I went back to get clips for this segment of the video, and I realized I completely forgot that there was a love interest, so that happens as well. I guess I can see children finding this grown-ass man pretending to be a dog, and the extravagant dog-themed set pieces and props to be fun and engaging, but the absolutely boring and nauseating courtroom scene drama at the end is just absolutely infuriating. Also, I completely forgot to mention this up until this point right now, but I'm actually re-recording this entire video. I got a brand new microphone after I recorded like at least 5 movies in this list, and I realized, I should probably just redo the whole thing so it doesn't sound like crap. And a huge disadvantage of that is I recorded a whole bunch of this on camera with like a cool TV set design in the back, but it looked like crap, and I was really tired when I did it, so I sound pretty incoherent. So I guess it was better that I ended up just scrapping all of it, but I did want to include at least a few clips from that moment because I think I said some funny stuff and I don't want it to go completely to waste. He's supposed to talk to the dog and tell people how the dog wants to spend his money. Now, obviously a plot like this could be very contentious. If this movie was anything higher than a G rating, they would do some pretty malicious stuff with this plotline. Like, I can imagine this dude being like, "The dog said he wanted a sports car, I don't know what to tell you." I actually recommend you watch this movie for the pure fact that I was laughing the entire time of how bad it was. If you have a group of friends who like to get intoxicated and watch bad movies and laugh at them, maybe add this one to the list. Most of these films are only interesting when it comes to their history within the Disney Channel as a whole, and not for what they actually are, so if I spend more time ranting about its context rather than the film itself, then it's definitely because the movie itself is just very uninteresting. I kind of want to put You Lucky Dog above Under Wraps just because I had quite a fun time laughing at it, but I don't think I can in good conscience, so it's going under Wraps. This movie is like Knives Out, but worse, which somehow makes it better.
I don't know what's worse, being blown up in nuclear war or having a 7-Eleven on every corner.
I'm kind of upset the list doesn't start with this one, because this movie is just absolutely fantastic. Brink follows the fun and exciting world of aggressive inline skating through the eyes of Andy Brinker, mainly referred to as Brink. The movie does a great job of setting up his group of friends who only hate 2 things: skateboarders and people who skate for profit. They preach the way of soul skating, and through their pure passion are actually able to be better at skating than their sellout buddies who only do it for profit. Brink's life becomes a lot more complicated once he starts skating for profit to help his family pay the bills since his father has suffered a back injury. Along with holding another part-time job and still having to do schoolwork, his life slowly begins to fall apart. Like I said earlier, I really like the friend group in this film. Unlike a lot of the films we're going to talk about later on, this movie does an amazing job of setting up who the characters are and their personalities, even if they get a brief amount of screen time. This is also the first of the sports movies we have on this list, which there are plenty of sports movies, trust me. And I might be a little bit biased in liking this one more than like the basketball ones. There's a lot of basketball ones. Mainly because I've always found skating and skateboarding to be really cool, and I never was really interested in other sports, but I do genuinely think it has a lot more going for it than the other sports movies on this list. Some sport movies have too much going for them, but we'll talk about that when we get there. There's plenty of good themes to chew on here, like the constant struggle of turning your passion into a job, or the horrible crushing weight of capitalism and how it affects young people and families who are just trying to stay afloat. You know, standard themes you might see on the Disney Channel. And Brink as a main character is charismatic and deeply empathetic, which gives him the power to triumph over adversity and lead his team into victory. This is the first movie where I can truly see the DCOM formula in full effect, and the movie just happens to be absolutely amazing in the process. I beg of you, please check this movie out if you haven't seen it yet. It just oozes youthful joy and has such a great message for youth and grown-ups alike.
Gain for your holy apostles the power to tramp underfoot serpents and scorpions. Grant me, your unworthy servant, pardon for all my sins, and the power.
Is there anything I can say about Halloweentown that hasn't been said already? This movie has definitely outlived DCOM's status as being one of the most recognizable Halloween movie franchises ever. Halloweentown is the story of Marnie Cromwell, a 13-year-old girl who loves all things spooky, yet is unable to celebrate Halloween because of her strict mother. This is all until her grandmother comes to visit and she finds out she's a wizard from the fantastical realm of Halloweentown, which needs to be saved from the twist villain, Mayor Kalabar. I'm sorry if I spoiled the fact that the mayor is the villain for you. You should really check out the movie. The atmosphere of this film is absolutely phenomenal, somehow being able to capture the essence of Halloween from the eyes of a child, from both the prosthetics and the set design. I absolutely love the special effects makeup in this movie. I swear I prefer clunky Spirit Halloween costumes over CGI all the time. They have such a charm to them that I feel like a lot of CGI just doesn't. But, you know, I think I'm biased in that sense. Speaking of, something I need to clarify going forward is that most of the footage that I'm getting for these movies is going to be from Disney+. And because of that, there are a whole lot of these old movies that for some reason have been re-rendered in 16:9. Just know that any movie that came out before the Princess Protection Program in 2008 were all originally made in 4:3 full screen and not 16:9 widescreen. So any of these movies, if you see it in widescreen, just know that I could not find the original aspect ratio version of the movie, and that's why you're seeing it that way. Again, I apologize, I really didn't want that to be the case, but that's just what ended up happening, so I'm sorry. Let's continue. I feel like a lot of these early DCOMs have really intentional scripts, and I feel like they almost were written for theatrical release, but for whatever reason couldn't get made, so they ended up being scooped up by Disney Channel. Because this film really does seem like it should have had a theatrical release. It reminds me a lot of Hocus Pocus. Maybe they learned from their mistakes of Hocus Pocus and then made it a DCOM because of that. Because Hocus Pocus was not well remembered at all. It was a financial box office bomb. But then once all the millennials became grown-ups and they saw reruns of it on TV, they became obsessed with it. And now it's like this huge cultural thing. And I feel like Halloweentown is like on the same level, but because it was a DCOM, it didn't get to have that attachment of failure to it. It was like a huge success because it was a TV movie. I guess that's another example of Disney marketing at its finest. Either way, I recommend this movie to anybody young or old. Even though it came out in the 90s, it's not extremely dated or anything. This could have came out in any decade and it still would have hit so hard. I don't know if I'm going to put it above Brink though, because I was so dazzled when I saw that movie for the first time, but it's a very close second. So this movie's going to go right below it. This was great. 2 amazing movies back to back. I can't wait to see what we have next. In between these 2 movies coming out, the movie Punks was released on January 12th. It is listed as a DCOM on the D23 website, but as far as I'm aware, it was not made for the Disney Channel, so I won't be reviewing it in this video. Just thought I would mention it because it seems that some people do remember this movie. It has Jessica Alba in it, along with some other famous actors. So while it has aired on Disney Channel, it was not created by Disney Channel, so I won't be counting it as a DCOM.
I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
What's that make us?
Absolutely nothing, which is what you are about to become.
I hate this movie. Sorry, I don't think I can beat around the bush with this one. We're going from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows in my opinion. Zenon, Girl of the 21st Century, is about Zenon, a girl who lives on a space station in the year 2052. Do you think this will be us in 30 years, guys? Do you think we'll get there? No offense to Zenon, but I actually ended up really disliking her in this movie. She's the main reason why I can't stand this thing. She gets herself into so much trouble that her parents end up sending her to live on Earth with her aunt, which is kind of like, we're sending you to boarding school to live with your grandma kind of storyline, but with the quirk of it being futuristic and space-themed. This movie has the same production quality as most made-for-TV sci-fi projects do, so I will say that the costume design, sets, and brief moments of CGI are at least comfortably dated instead of just outright looking like crap. Like, I think they have a nice charm to them. I do enjoy a lot of that aspect of the movie. And honestly, the costumes for the Earth people are so dated that it's come back around to being trendy and modern looking again, so that's very funny. I mean, look at the main love interest. He literally looks like Chase Hudson. That's so hilarious to me. Another common thing for DCOMs going forward is going to be movies being adaptations of books, which this movie is. Again, I just have to assume someone wanted to make a movie adaptation of this book, and the only people who would pick it up were Disney Channel, because again, they were desperate for original content at this time. Again, Zenon is the main thing that ruins this movie for me. She's just very selfish and rude to everyone around her, yet for some reason she barely gets reprimanded for her actions. It kind of feels like she just makes a 180 and all of a sudden she's nice to people at the end so the movie can have a satisfying conclusion. Again, they do soften the edges of her character over time, so her smarts are able to help in aiding solve the main problem of the movie, which is that there are some evil government people who are trying to shut down the space station, I think, which is also the plot of the second movie, but, you know, we'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, I just did not like Zenon so much, and maybe I was just in a bad mood when I watched this movie because I was absolutely screaming at my TV at 2 in the morning. So, again, that's my personal bias. Also, Raven Simonier is in this movie as a side character, so that's really cool, but she got recasted in the next movie, so that's not cool. I'm sorry, but this movie's gonna go at the bottom of the list, and I think it's gonna stay there for the rest of the ranking. I'm really sorry. I just can't help it. I just don't like this movie. I don't know why. This movie makes me want to tear a tree down from its roots. I hate it so much. Please don't make me watch it again.
You consumed adequate supplements. Any viruses should be neutralized. All toxins eliminated. The candidate is suitable for digestion.
Can I be honest here? Is this a safe space? I'll admit that I did not watch Can of Worms in the most ideal of settings. Around the summertime, when I decided to start this project, I sat down at 9 p.m. and watched a total of 8 DCOMs in a row, meaning that I started with You Lucky Dog and ended with Johnny Tsunami. Around Zenon and Can of Worms is when I started losing it just a little bit. I did somehow end up throwing up during this movie, and a little bit of Zenon as well, which might have contributed to my sour impression of those movies. And I want to make it clear that I did not throw up because this movie is gross. I mean, yeah, it is gross. It's probably one of the grossest movies I've ever seen, but that's not why I threw up. I was so exhausted at the time that I got to this movie, and, you know, it's the summertime, so I'd just been eating cold ravioli out of the can for 3 days straight at this point. So that's truly my own fault. And I'm gonna try my best to be as partial to this movie as possible. I have not attempted to repeat what I did on that fateful night. I now only watch up to 3 DCOMs in one sitting, and I make sure to drink plenty of water, eat my fruits and vegetables. So, beyond all of that, what did I think of Can of Worms? Well, it's gross. I actually remembered close to nothing about this movie, other than the extremely disgusting and very cool looking alien creatures they used for this film. It had the exact same effect on me as Halloweentown, where I automatically wanted to be endeared to the movie because of the time and care put into the puppetry, but the story itself has little to be desired, so I can't give it the same praise as that movie. This is another movie based on a book, and it follows Mike Pillsbury, a guy who gets so down on his luck one day that he decides to contact aliens and say that he's being held captive on Earth and that he is an alien himself. This causes a bunch of aliens to come down to Earth with various silly offers for Mike. This is until an alien that enjoys capturing rare specimen comes in and captures Mike's little brother. Now he and his schoolmates must team up to save his little brother and take down the Thode, which is the name of the bounty hunter, by the way, or I think that's the name of his species. He's a Thode. He's like a toad creature. It's quite cool looking, actually. I thought this movie was absolutely dreadful when I first watched it, considering it caused me to spew red, white, and blue when I watched it, but I think the campy nature of it causes me to ease up on the harshness a little bit. This movie wastes a lot of your time before the actual plot starts, and it thinks that slimy puppets and floppy disk antics will be enough to sustain your attention, but it really isn't. It just doesn't quite hit the mark for me personally. This movie is gonna go low on the list, probably right next to Zenon, but not all the way at the bottom like I had it before. Check it out if you enjoy nasty little creatures oozing on food to consume it and skittering around your screen.
Okay, fine. Not a mermaid, my bad! Whoa.
The 13th Year was one of my favorite movies growing up. I would literally get so excited whenever they would air this movie. I remembered loving it so much. And I will say it did not disappoint on rewatch. The 13th Year follows adopted teen Cody Griffin, whose birth mother is a mermaid who gave him up as a baby to avoid from him being captured. Once he turns 13, he starts to turn into a mermaid, which affects his personal life and competitive swimming career. I like that this is a male mermaid movie. I feel like we don't see those often. It was a really nice touch in my opinion, and also I think the allegories they were going for with this movie kind of fit more from a male perspective. I like that the movie ends with him reuniting with his biological mother and transforming into a full mermaid and going off into the sea, promising to be back once school starts. I feel like that was a nice touch in my opinion. They very easily could have had him only wave to her in the distance as she swims off, making the decision that being human is more important than learning how his life as a mermaid could be. I get why most movies do that kind of ending, because the audience themselves can't turn into a mermaid, and the ending kind of implies that being a mermaid is way cooler than being a human, which it is. But it shows that the main point of the movie is that Cody is entering a new phase of his life, and he needs to do some self-discovery. So I think that was a very poignant way to end the movie. Most of the turning into fish moments were quite delightful. This is very clearly supposed to be an allegory for puberty and how your body changes a lot when you become an awkward tween and such. I didn't care for the competitive swimming parts as much. I'm just more here for fish antics. But overall, I think this is a good movie to watch if you love mermaids or you're one of those people that wanted to live in a town near an ocean dock or something as a kid. I mean, that sounds quite lovely, but I'm assuming it just smells a lot like fish. The 13th year is going right under Halloweentown in the ranking.
I think it's time to thank your father for bringing home minimum wage.
Thanks, Dad.
Smart House is one of those movies that so many people talk about, yet I still don't see it as being overrated in any way. Smart House follows 13-year-old Ben Cooper, a kid who enters a contest to win a smart house. And then he does. The movie puts an emphasis on Ben and his family being fractured after the death of his mother, and they show how he has started to grow up too fast to take care of his little sister and father. In that sense, you can kind of see why he would want to live in the smart house, other than the fact that entering contests on the internet is cool. I wouldn't be surprised if Smart House was actually propaganda on Disney Channel's part to make us all thought that those sweepstakes that they were doing 10 million times throughout the year were super cool. But besides that, Ben might be feeling overworked after literally becoming a parent to his own father and sister, and he's clearly afraid of his father dating other people since he reprograms the house to be more of a motherly figure in their life. I feel like this is a classic case of the child doesn't understand that their parent has their own inner world and feelings yet, since Ben thinks his father is looking to replace the hole left in their family brought about by the death of their mother, when in reality, him dating Sarah, the lady who created the smart house in the first place, is not there to be the new mom or anything. Like, she's literally just dating a man. It's clear that Ben thinks this way because he never properly moved on past the death, and Ben went on to fully replace the mother in the family dynamic instead of finding a new way to live past this tragedy. Oh, and there's some cool 90s tech from this house as well. This is an example of one of those movies where I do think the main appeal is look at all this awesome, cool sci-fi tech from the 90s, but I do think that there is a genuine heart to the movie at the end of the day that I think works really well as a nice message for children. Yes, it's very hand-fisted and very obvious and a little bit too after-school special feeling, but since this is a kids movie, I'm not going to judge it on that part. If it teaches kids a little bit about grief, then that's all fine in my books. I love Katie Sagal in this role quite a lot. She does a good job of voice acting early on and then actually becoming the smart house mother at the end. She's one of my favorite actors of all time, I swear she's the best. Overall, I actually really enjoyed this movie, and I wasn't expecting to because it was kind of one that I avoided on rewatch as a kid. I don't know why, I just was never really that interested in the idea of it, but I really recommend Smart House to anybody, really. If you're feeling nostalgic for the movie, give it a watch. I think you'll be surprised. I feel like this is a great movie for kids to watch. You know, maybe put this on the TV instead of 10 hours of Cocomelon, you know? It might be entertaining for them. Who knows? Whenever I watch this movie, I crave tuna noodle casserole, and I see that as a good thing. So it's going right under the 13th year in the ranking.
We got new clothes from the donation bin. I'm a surfer.
Look, Daddy, Todd is stupid, and I'm with him.
We got another classic here, guys. I remember also loving this movie growing up. The 13th Year and Johnny Tsunami together almost felt like a double feature, so now seeing that they aired within the same year and very close to each other is very vindicating for me. Although, unlike the 13th Year, I remembered little to nothing about the plot of this film when going back for a rewatch. Johnny Tsunami follows 13-year-old Johnny Kampala, a talented surfer whose family moved from Hawaii to Vermont, taking him away from his beloved surfing champion grandfather and his one true passion. Yeah, I should clarify, Johnny Tsunami is actually the name of his grandfather. The Johnny who's the main character in the movie is not called that. He got that name because he saved a bunch of people from a tsunami. So, just a little bit of an interesting quirk for you to understand there. Now in Vermont, Johnny must now learn how to adapt to his new life and find a new passion, which in this case happens to be snowboarding. I completely forgot that Jett Jackson is in this movie as Johnny's friend Sam, along with Zenon too as the love interest. I'll be honest, it was surprising seeing her in a contemporary role not saying Zetus Lupitus for once. Johnny has his general complications with trying to adjust to living in Vermont where it's cold, snowy, and the bullies are a skiing gang called the Skies. Even after watching this movie again, a lot of the general plot just slips from my mind, and I don't want to rely entirely on the Wikipedia summary of this movie for my review, so just let me clarify that even though the general conceit of the movie is fun, the actual plot is not really what sells this movie for me. I vaguely remember things like Johnny clashing with his father and missing his grandpa, who his dad thinks is a washed-up surfing loser who is a bad influence on his son, which causes Johnny to run away back to Hawaii with his new friend, whose dad is making him move to Iceland. Eventually, the dad learns to stop being a snooty dickhead after pushing his son so much that he literally flies back to Hawaii. I think he, hijacks a military plane. It's wild. And I think Johnny is supposed to learn to love his new home, but the conflict with the bullies must be resolved once he gets back to Vermont, and then the movie just kind of ends. So I guess that's supposed to mean he's adjusting well? I do think this is a good movie. I also think it just loses the plot a little bit when it comes to what it's actually doing within the film, if that makes sense. The script tries to split the difference between a more personal drama and a sports movie, and I think the movie would be better if it just picked one or did a better job at juggling both. Either way, I recommend this movie if you're in the mood for some decom cheese, but it doesn't necessarily surpass its limitations in a way that would make me happy. It's still high in the ranking though, don't you worry.
Douglas Doogie Howser is a whiz kid who breezed through high school in just 9 weeks. At age 10, he graduated from Princeton and then passed his medical board at 14.
I actually didn't mind Genius all that much. I just think there are some fundamental issues with it. Emmy Rossum from Shameless and Phantom of the Opera is in this movie as the love interest as well, which is pretty cool. Anyways, Genius is about a 13-year-old kid named Charlie, who is so smart that he is now a college professor, but finds himself feeling lonely with no friends and a lack of social skills. So he enrolls himself in middle school again, this time putting up the persona of an edgy class clown type, and quickly gets wrapped up in the lies of having to live two different lives. It's almost like he's trying to have the best of both worlds. For some reason, a lot of these movies feel the need to have silly scientists experimenting on stuff in the B-plot, when in reality this movie would be a whole lot better if it just focused on the character dynamics it sets up. I would have liked to see the college elements be expanded on more, and I think the hockey player body controlling part could have easily be cut without ruining the movie or anything. If you haven't seen this movie, that sentence is probably, really wild. This is one of those liar reveal plot lines as well, so again, I feel like the character elements are what should be focused on the most. But I can see where the creators were coming from. They probably thought kids wouldn't be interested in college stuff because they were too young to understand, and most likely thought children would get bored if there wasn't some cool action moment like the ice rink exploding when everything goes to shit. Having Charlie spend all his time at the college working with wacko scientists is just beyond me. It would have been really funny if Charlie learned to be a better college professor by attending middle school again, and learned how to bond with his students by observing what his peers do for the first time in his life, since he just Sheldon Coopered his way through life and never stopped to make friends. I think that's what the movie was supposed to be about, but then the writers just got confused and started rewriting HE double hockey sticks on accident. More scenes of him attempting to be an edgy bad kid in middle school would have been funny to see as well. Maybe show him leaning a bit too much into it and letting the two quote-unquote personalities of his collide accidentally, and having that be a good thing. People start to appreciate him more because he's a well-rounded individual instead of just two polar opposite stereotypes. Charlie's middle school friends can be impressed that he's actually really smart, and his college students will think he's cool for not having a stick up his ass literally the entire time. Like I said, this movie is okay, and it has some good ideas, but I'm not sure how well it all works together. A lot of these movies seem to start with good premises, but just get really confusing and unnecessarily convoluted as the story goes on. Keeping things simple might be the best for these movies where the premise is really distinct and strong. It's going in the middle of the ranking.
Hello, Ogie. Jack, but they said you were dead.
Welcome to one of the most controversial decoms ever made. Don't Look Under the Bed is considered one of the scariest Halloween movies Disney has ever made for kids, and for good reason, because this thing pushed a lot of boundaries for the time, believe it or not. I feel like we need more children's horror like this, where it's absolutely pants-shittingly terrifying for kids, but not too much traumatizing or anything. I feel like kids need to experience some spooky stuff in a safe environment. There's a lot of charm to this movie, and I actually think the 4:3 aspect ratio adds to the experience rather than feeling like the movie is being constrained to it. The entire film feels very claustrophobic and uncomfortable, which is exactly what they were going for in certain moments, so it's great. I try my best not to mention my 4:3 hyper-fixation when talking about these earlier movies, but I think this one, it actually matters, so that's why I decided to bring it up. Don't Look Under the Bed is about an odd set of circumstances happening around the sleepy town of Middlesbrough, all of which are being framed as the fault of Frances, a young girl who is starting high school early. I'm going to assume she's 13 years old then, because she's skipped a year apparently. An imaginary friend named Larry tells her that the boogeyman is what's framing her, so now they must figure out what's going on and how to stop it. This movie has a pretty good message of not growing up too fast, and it does it in a unique way that I wished other DCOMs would. We learn that Larry is Francis's younger brother Darwin's imaginary friend, and that the current boogeyman after them was created when Frances stopped believing in her imaginary friend at too young of an age. Does that all make sense? Darwin had cancer a few years back, and the trauma that both of them faced from this experience caused Frances to grow up too fast, and is trying to get Darwin to do the same. Through the magic of childhood whimsy, they are able to restore the boogeyman into a good imaginary friend again, and the kids learn to grow up at a normal pace and keep that childhood wonder alive within them. This movie is controversial because of the honestly scary-looking SFX makeup for the boogeyman, and for featuring an interracial kiss between Frances and Larry. Both things look tame in the modern day, so I guess that just proves how much society has changed over the past 25 years. But still, it was a very important thing to note when this movie came out. I also specifically remember Disney Channel only airing this movie late at night, and hyping it up as like one of the scariest movies that ever air on the network. So, it has a lot of mystique around it, I guess. Overall, Don't Look Under the Bed is a great children's horror movie, with some very cool visuals to boot. I'd recommend this for anyone who doesn't really like real horror, but wants something fun and spooky to enjoy over the Halloween season. It's pretty up my alley, honestly.
Mannequins these days. So weird.
And the most boring movie award goes to... In all honesty, Horse Sense is the type of movie I could see my grandma enjoying. This seems like something she'd stumble upon while she's channel surfing on her cable television and maybe watch 30 minutes of before she goes to make dinner and do her laundry. This is definitely a stop watching to do the laundry movie if I've ever seen one. Horse Sense follows the characters of Michael and his cousin Tommy, who live very different lives. 20-year-old Michael lives in LA and mooches off of his rich parents while being engrossed in socialite life, while 11-year-old Tommy works as a ranch hand for his mom in Montana. Tommy goes to visit Michael in LA and is treated like absolute shit for the entire trip by his cousin, and it's Michael's now proven incompetence that causes him to be sent to Montana to help out on his aunt's farm as punishment. Tommy willfully messes with Michael's tasks and make his time on the farm as hard and difficult as possible. This is supposed to be one of those the rich and spoiled get humbled movies, and I mean, for that part I can enjoy it. Again, I'd put this on during Christmas time with my grandma in between watches of A Christmas Chalet and Yuletide the Knot, both very real and very good movies, by the way, because it's innocent enough to not provide any real social commentary and just be an upper movie about horses. Horse Sense stars two of the three Lawrence brothers, who, for those who don't know, were a famous trio of brothers who were in a lot of projects in the 1990s and 2000s, with DCOMs being a big part of their career as well. I didn't know about the Lawrence brothers until starting this watch, and they're in so many DCOMs throughout the 3-block era, so be ready for more of them. Horse Sense ends with Michael finding out the ranch is going into foreclosure, because of course it is, and they're able to negotiate their way into getting a land trust and staying on the farm forever. If you like horses, then the horse stuff is cool, but if you're lukewarm on horses or even scared of them, then I wouldn't recommend this movie, sorry. I originally had this very, very low on the ranking, but I think it's gonna end up more on the bottom upper section, if that makes sense, because, I mean, it's not harmful in any way, it just bores me to tears.
Shit! Language!
We have finally reached the dreaded year 2000. The world was supposed to end, and although it didn't, in retrospect I kinda wish it did so I wouldn't have to watch the next 12 movies we have coming up. Up and Away is about a family of superheroes. Our main character, Scott Marshall, is turning 14 and is hoping he'll get his superpowers soon. His older brother and younger sister already have theirs, so he's afraid of being left out. Also, their main weakness is aluminum foil, by the way. There's a duo of environmentalist villains called the Earth Protectors named Nina and Marshall. Nina actually wants to spread education regarding environmentalism, but Marshall is using the CDs they passed out at Scott's school to try and brainwash people into doing crimes for him. Scott pretends he's gotten his powers at his birthday party to please his parents, but it goes too far once they ask him to go on his first superhero mission to save Nina, who Marshall is using as bait to catch the Marshall family of superheroes. This plan does work, and the Marshall family is trapped in a giant aluminum foil cage, like a baked potato or something, and Scott is able to save the day specifically because he has no powers. Since he has no powers, that also means he has no weaknesses, and his humanity is what allows him to organize the family into stopping the bad guy before he brainwashes them all to do evil. Let me just say it right now, I realize it, this movie is just Encanto, but live action. Throughout the entire thing, I was expecting Scott to eventually get his powers in sky-high fashion, which is not a decom by the way, just a regular old Disney movie that was not made for the channel, but was probably more successful on there anyways. But he doesn't, proving that his real power is being able to mediate his family's powers through communication. So again, Encanto. I watched this movie before Encanto even came out, so that shows you how long I've been working on this project. Overall, this is a cute superhero movie with some really fun costuming, and the budget being low does kind of shine through when it comes to the special effects. But I'd recommend this movie for kids if you can't think of anything to show them, because it's honestly very silly and a very fun movie. Also, if kids will watch 12 Hours of Cocomelon, I think they can endure some bad CGI every once in a while in a movie. It's not one I'm personally going to go back to that often, but it really isn't the worst thing ever. It's going right next to Under Wraps in the ranking, so somewhere in the middle.
Who do you think shot JFK?
I don't know, because they don't want me to know.
Check it out, man. I'm a chip off the old block.
The Color of Friendship is a very good movie with an important message, which, not to sound like a dig, is pretty unusual for the Disney Channel. This movie takes place in 1977 and follows two girls who participate in the foreign exchange program. Piper, the American, has a father who is an outwardly vocal congressman about the apartheid going on in South Africa, and she asks to host an African exchange student. They get Marie, whose father is a South African policeman. The two are shocked when they see each other and are forced to question their own biases when it comes to not looking how each other expected them to look. The movie actually does tackle a lot of interesting topics regarding the preconceptions people have about different countries, like that all Americans are white and that all Africans are black. The setup of having a black American host a white African is just the kind of plot a decom would do, but setting the story during apartheid and giving the story a pointed political message is what makes this film different from all the others. The emotions of the characters is how the story goes about telling its tale, and for a decom, with its limited scope and goals, is able to achieve what I think they were attempting to achieve okay enough. I honestly don't have much to say about this film, other than I think it would work perfectly fine in an elementary school history lesson or something like that. I think it's a good movie to show kids for that exact reason, because I have a feeling a lot of American children, who I'm assuming was the target audience for this movie, learned close to nothing about apartheid, so this can introduce the topic to them in a perfectly fine and surface-level way. Disney Channel rarely handles such quote-unquote mature subject matter as this, but when they do it in the most textbook clinical way possible, refusing to add any commentary that might stray away from the very rigid and monetizable norm. So because of that, I think for adults, a film with more challenging material on the subject might be more interesting to watch. I don't know how to rank The Color of Friendship. It's a perfectly fine film, but not one I personally go to watch that often because of the reasons I mentioned already. It's a good movie, and that's about it.
Hey guys. That doesn't count. Do-over.
There are no do-overs in Wii Bowling.
I was absolutely enjoying Alley Cat Strike, up to a certain point. This movie had me mostly sold in the beginning, but by the second act it really started to falter in my opinion. I love ensemble casts where every character has their own little quirk, and when the main group of geeky bowling kids with a love for 1950s music and a superiority complex showed up on my screen, I almost couldn't help myself. I told myself that this was going to be one of the best movies of the entire watch, and I was going to devote this entire section to giving this movie praise and calling it a cinematic masterpiece. And then I kept watching. Alley Cat Strike follows the main character, Alex, and his friends Delia, Eliza, and Ken. They all love the superficial outer aesthetics of the 1950s, and I would hope not the political landscape and reality of the 1950s, and they are all on the West Appleton bowling team at their school. Alex's father runs the local bowling alley in town that is in financial ruin because none of the teens are going out to bowl anymore. I love that this movie associates the 1950s with bowling, like the two are one and the same or something, which is why the bowling alley isn't doing well, because it's not the 1950s anymore. The cities of East and West Appleton pick a sport and have their teams battle it out for an ugly-looking trophy because the mayors hate each other or something. So everyone picks a side based on what school they went to. Our main characters think the battle is stupid. That is until bowling is picked as the next sport the two schools must battle against. Popular basketball player Todd decides to join the bowling team to bring the school another victory, and his cool guy persona and willingness to be nice to these assholes does not go as smoothly as he'd hoped. This quickly becomes a main character starts hanging out with the popular crowd and his friends get mad that they've changed in the first act plot, which is just so damn annoying to see. I was actually really excited to see where this movie was going to go, and it all got derailed real fast. After that, the movie is just hard to root for, and it lowers from one of the best DCOMs ever to just like the rest of them. Sure, Todd is a bit arrogant and overconfident at times, but he gets people to actually go to Alex's father's shitty bowling alley and teaches Alex how to talk to the girl he likes, and also about like friendship and stuff. Only at the end are the rest of the gang even slightly nice to him, which is such a shame. The big game happens because this is a sports movie after all, and Delia wins the big game for them all. The reason why the competition was so important is because the winner got to name the new school that was being built, and the elite bowling people go for a central name that doesn't favor either side, because I guess that's what this movie was about all along. I wish this movie would focus more on the friend dynamic they set up. Since this movie is so plot heavy, and they focused on the dynamic between Alex and Todd so much, the rest of the bowling team really don't feel like they have any purpose at all. It could just be one person that Alex betrays and who clashes with Todd. That would make the whole pacing a lot better, and there wouldn't be all this wasted time on establishing characters that do nothing. Either way, I did feel joy when watching the first 10 minutes of this movie, so that has to count for something, right? This movie is going to end up somewhere near the middle of the ranking, but it's in the top 10 in my heart.
Oh, look, 1 foot. Oh, look, no feet.
Rip Girls bored me beyond belief. Why did Disney Channel make so many sports movies back then? I don't want to offend anyone who remembers liking this movie, but go back and try and watch this movie without feeling like you just taken a fucking Finnegan. Rip Girls follows 13-year-old Sydney Miller, a girl who was born in Hawaii and moved to Chicago when she was really young after her mother's death. One day she inherits a large plot of farming land from a family member, and she must travel back to her home state with her dad and stepmom to arrange a settlement for the land. While she's there, she meets with the local tweens who love to surf, and she learns to connect back with her roots. Of course, her dad doesn't allow her to surf because that's how her mom died, so a lot of the runtime is devoted to her hiding her new hobby from him as he arranges the land to be turned into a big resort that'll ruin the local economy. Through the power of friendship and dead parent vibes, she's able to avoid signing the land away to a bunch of gentrifiers and save the town, kind of. At least there's a real internal conflict with this character having to make such a big decision like that that'll affect many people at such a young age. I can understand how a movie like this would be interesting to some people when it comes to the surfing stuff as well. This movie has such a sleepy vibe to it, and I'm not just saying that because I made the Finnegan joke earlier. The pacing in the beginning is so slow, and a lot of the shots have this very dreamy and atmospheric air to them, which isn't really the vibe I think about when I think about a 2000s surfer movie, but whatever. Having a girl-led surfer movie to contrast with Johnny Tsunami was interesting as well. However, since this movie came out not even a year after Johnny Tsunami did, it feels too soon to be having another surfing movie that takes place in Hawaii. Well, most of Johnny Tsunami does take place in Vermont, but Hawaii and surfing haunts that movie like a totally radical ghost. It's just that the family dynamics are much more set up and devoted in that movie than they are in this one. Has Rip Girls ever made anyone cry? Crying from boredom doesn't count, by the way. I'm sorry, but I was just really bored by Rip Girls. But I can see young people who are really into the ocean finding this thing a fun watch. I'm neither of those things, by the way, a young person or a really into the ocean person, so this movie just isn't for me, really. Maybe I'm not giving this movie enough credit, or maybe it just really does suck eggs. It's going near the bottom of the list in the ranking, mainly because I really did not have a fun time watching it, although any movie I watched after Alley Cat's strike was going to pale in comparison, so don't take my review all that seriously.
Oh my god, Stevie, no!
So many sports movies. When will they leave me alone? This one is at least a little bit more different. It follows a much more unique sport, and it stars Frankie Muniz. Miracle in Lane 2 follows Frankie Muniz as the character of Justin Yoder, a 12-year-old diagnosed with spina bifida and is wheelchair-bound. He becomes interested in the sport of soapbox racing after trying out many other hobbies and not being accommodated for his disability. My man can't even join the chess team. These guys are such major dickheads. This is actually based on the real-life person of Justin Yoder, who changed soapbox racing history by inventing a handbrake instead of a traditional foot brake, which was later added to be allowed for kids with disabilities to use in following competitions. There's a side story of Justin's brother who feels left out by his family, who are constantly spending time with Justin to help him with his soapbox career. The two do talk it out and make up by the end of the film, but I really don't know how people with disabilities feel about storylines like these in movies, so I won't share my piece since I really don't know how to feel about it. Those with information on this topic, please leave comments below letting me know your opinions on the storyline, along with the whole movie if you've seen it. There's also a lot of religious elements in this movie, which is very interesting as well. Justin talking to God at different points in the movie felt kind of weird to me, since I guess casual Christian elements in movies were less controversial back then, since I remember Disney Channel doing it quite often in some of their projects. There's really no need to add a religious element to this movie, although if they were working with Justin Yoder and he encouraged them to add this sort of element to develop his character within the movie more, then I understand where it was coming from. I will say though, it would have been nice to see a kid who actually uses a wheelchair playing the character of Justin. I'm not sure if they thought no one would care or noticed, or if Frankie Muniz already had brand name recognition by this point, so hiring him in the lead role was a chance of attracting a larger audience. Either way, celebrity casting doesn't really seem to be needed for this kind of movie, and there were probably many child actors who use wheelchairs who could have been perfectly fine for this movie. With stories like this, the Disney Channel tries their best to stay respectful in its portrayal and be an overall upper and informative movie about children with disabilities. So I do think this is a fine movie, just not one I see myself going back to anytime soon. I'm getting a sense of deja vu. Again, throw it on the projector for an elementary school class if you're a teacher who's too hungover to teach that day. Again, going in the middle of the ranking.
Who are you? I'm the stepsister you've always wanted.
Really? Because you look like the ugly stepsister from Snow White.
That's Cinderella, you freak. Now could you turn down the music?
What a wacky film we have in our hands today. I watched Stepsister from Planet Weird at 5 in the morning while doing my laundry because I fell asleep the night before at 8 p.m. watching Miracle in Lane 2. So many of these Zoog movies just put me to sleep, even if they have intriguing premises like this one. I honestly forgot everything about this movie and had to go back to refresh my memory just so I could recap it. Stepsister from Planet Weird follows Megan, a girl whose mother is getting married to an interesting new guy, and she just can't stand her new stepsister. What Megan and her mother don't know is that her fiancé-to-be Cosmo and his daughter Ariel are actually aliens from the planet Zircalon. It's always some stupid name like Zircalon, isn't it? And that their true forms are that of a gaseous bubble that floats around freely in the atmosphere. Ariel fits in well at school because the students like her otherworldly, not trying too hard energy, much to the chagrin of Megan, who tries very hard to be popular all the time. Of course, Cosmo and his ruse is revealed right in time for their wedding, and we learn that the two are actually escaping war from their original planet. Oh, and the two main girls swap boyfriends or something, because of course they do. The atmosphere of this thing is definitely strange, I will say that. I think one of the reasons why my memory was wiped of this movie is because the plot is very generic, but it's the CGI and performances that are really notable. I did remember a lot of elements from this movie, but not a lot of what actually happened. Cosmo and Ariel constantly drinking soda and being terrified of wind is something that I immediately thought of, but I could not tell you what they did in the movie. So I think that's a testament to them needing a better script, but having a good central idea at least. I luckily have the benefit of hindsight on my hands with this one, so I can tell you all that Disney Channel will repeat this subplot of outsider becomes popular because they were just being themselves. Which feels self-serving to the point of farce. I know it's supposed to be a subversion of the idea of popularity and how it works in tween movies past, but it just makes me roll my eyes as a grown-up now. This is supposed to be the age of family-friendly movies that kids and their parents can enjoy, but I really don't see what the target demographic is. It's the same with You Lucky Dog. I'm like, it seems too slow for young kids, but it seems too generic and mindless for grown-ups, so I don't really see its point in the modern day, if I'm being honest. I know it's slightly well remembered in this kind of zoog era of DCOMs, probably because there's a lot of memorable elements, but it's not a memorable movie. And to that, I'm sorry if you like this movie.
Hey, is there a doctor in the house?
Right up here, above your head.
Hey, Doc, look, they're gonna kick me off the force. I'm as blind as a bat. What do you say? Can you help me?
Yeah, okay, just give me a minute, all right?
All right.
Be quiet.
Sorry.
Genuinely yawning my way through this review of Ready to Run. I hope no one minds. I watched the sunrise on a hot summer morning while watching this movie, and I was genuinely envious that I had decided to watch this movie instead of sitting outside in the tranquil 6 a.m. silence for an hour or so. Ready to Run follows 14-year-old Corey Ortiz, who dreams of becoming a jockey one day. Her mom forbids her from becoming a jockey, however, because her father died in a horse-related accident. No, I'm not kidding. The amount of cliches in this movie is honestly astronomical, and if that wasn't bad enough, she can also talk to the horses. So the thing is, I really don't get how a movie that has a horse girl who can talk to horses can be so fucking boring. This is something Disney Channel is going to recreate in the future, just letting you know, and it's going to be just as annoying as it was the first time around. To give this movie some credit, I do like the cultural aspect of this film, making it just slightly above milquetoast. I don't talk about it on my channel that often, but I am Hispanic, so I really felt a sense of comfort when watching the party scene or even just looking at the house that Corey lives in. I really think that silent representation like this was important to me as a kid at the time, because I would sometimes feel alienated by the TV when I watched mostly people who were cliche stereotypes that looked like me on screen. However, having my queen in this movie does not give it a pass for being boring as hell, because that's primarily what it is. The horse has an annoying personality, and I didn't care about any of the stakes. Again, this is just because I'm not that into horses, and I never have been. I've been on a horse exactly one time in my life, and it was when I was around 5 years old. And it was kind of fun, but those big old lugs have never left a lasting impact on me. If you like horses, then I bet this will be a fun watch for you, but it's going low in my ranking. Sorry.
But I don't like pistachio!
Then why did you ask for it?
I think I need some ibuprofen after watching Quints. Quints follows Kimberly J. Brown in a non-Halloweentown themed DCOM where she plays Jamie, an 8th grader whose mom gets pregnant with quintuplets. Their family was already struggling financially and must now attempt to raise 6 kids instead of just 1, and Jamie must grapple with the issues that come with having much younger siblings while you're attempting to figure out who you are as a person. We find out that she's really into art and painting, yet her parents want her to attend prestigious science-based school later on, giving her this pressure to be somebody she really isn't. How the parents are able to afford paying for their new expenses is by getting into the world of show business and advertising, putting their 5 newborns in ads for diapers and other baby products of the such. The initial conceit of the story is that Jamie feels her parents put too much pressure on her and focus on every little thing she does, so when the new babies come along, she's relieved to finally have a focus off of her and be able to quote-unquote do whatever she wants. In reality, it wasn't that her parents focused on her way too much, it was that they were focusing primarily on the negative things in her life, like her low science grades or her focus on art-related elements rather than math. It's only until later on they're able to realize that they were pressuring her into being someone she was not, and that she needs to embrace her true self, blah blah blah, other boring life lessons and stuff. I do think a movie like this can be acceptable for families to watch together, and it can be helpful for starting conversations about how parents and children interact with each other. Like if a kid feels their parents are doing this to them, maybe it could be a great way to communicate that, instead of just actually directly saying it, because that's hard for children a lot of the time. This is one where I could actually see the target audience appreciate what they were trying to do. But that doesn't mean I actually like the movie. Even though I could at least recall certain moments of this thing, I really left the movie with this pain in my left temple that came from all the scenes where there were just 5 screaming babies that needed to be taken care of. I think so many of these movies feel the need to pad out the runtime with antics because the actual plot wouldn't fill up an entire 90-minute film. So we just have to take a break and pause the movie for it feels like an hour just to get screaming babies. Overall, I like Kimberly J. Brown as this plucky kid who just wants to follow her dreams. I think she plays this role as Disney ingenue pretty well. But I don't see myself ever wanting to go back to this film, and I'm going to forget about it as soon as I stop talking about it right now.
I can't be the clone. I'm me. He's got to be the clone. No, see, I'm me. I'm me. Help me out here. I am me, right?
The Other Me is one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen, and I mean that in a different way than you might think. This is another Lawrence Brothers movie as well. I never knew there were so many DComs with them back in the day. The Other Me follows Andrew Lawrence as Will, a slacker kid who's not doing too well in science class, so he accidentally clones himself in an attempt to get a winning science project. We get to watch as Tui, as they call him, I'm not fucking kidding, as he learns about life and all of its different assets. Will then sends his clone to school and other events he doesn't want to go to, leading to people commenting on his apparent shift in personality, which they seem to like a whole lot better than how he was before. There is a commentary on how society bogs down children to behave a certain way, which can cause them to act in a way that may be seen as inauthentic to their true selves. Tui, bad name and all, is an example of how Will could be if he wasn't constantly afraid of being judged or seen as quote-unquote not cool by his fellow peers. That is, assuming that his clone is an exact copy of him in every way and is only able to become his own person once he is created. I mean, the motherfucker learns how to speak English by watching TV while locked in a closet. I don't really know how he's functioning so well in society. Will gets jealous of how his clone is able to be much more popular at school without him even trying, when all he did was try to be cool and still ends up coming up short. So the message of this movie, along with many other DComs, is be yourself. They just copied this from Stepsister from Planet Weird. These literally came out so close to each other. I cannot believe they were able to do that. Also, like many other DComs, there's a random scientist B-plot in here as well. I mean, I get that there has to be an explanation as to why Will was able to make a clone of himself from an everyday box of sea monkeys, with the reason being that his box happened to get the clonability goop all over it before it got shipped out. The sea monkey people are selling the sea monkeys as a front for their clone research, and once they find out their experiment has accidentally come true, they hunt down Will and his clone for further research. The movie ends with Tui possibly blipping out of existence if he doesn't drink some permanent corporeal form goop soon, so the two, with the help of their school friends, steal the permanent corporeal form goop from the scientists and get them arrested for stalking, I guess. I mean, that's a pretty decent reason they were stalking these two kids. And then, despite all the odds, they decide to keep the clone. That's really the weirdest part of the movie to me. I mean, I understand they wouldn't kill him or send him off to New York or anything, but still, what a wild movie and what a wild ending. Either way, The Other Me is a bizarre movie beyond what I thought it was going to be. I honestly have no idea where it would be in the ranking. I've kind of convinced myself that it's actually kind of good over time. It's a good drinking movie if you can find a copy of it, because it's not on Disney Plus anymore. Maybe it'll be close to that Alien Stepsister movie in the rankings, since those two are both equally wacky and low-key have the same plot. Since both are equally wacky, yet still kind of boring at the same time. There's just no originality there. I've never seen Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire before this watch through, and 100% of the reason for that is because it was constantly getting mixed up with My Babysitter's a Vampire, which is my favorite movie and the best thing to ever exist. This movie is about 10 years older than Mabav, so there's really no reason for me to be upset, but that happened within me anyways. Either way, I'm really glad I got the chance to watch this film, because it's actually pretty good. Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire follows 13-year-old Adam Hansen, a horror movie-obsessed kid who really wants to go to a horror movie screening with a Degrassi and Mabav star, but can't because of his strict mom, who has put her whole life into her kids and work after her divorce. Adam and his sister decide to set her up with a vampire hunter on a date so they can have one night without her constant watching eye, but they accidentally end up setting her up with the vampire instead. Wacky antics ensued. I have a soft spot for main characters where their personality is that they love horror movies and all things spooky, especially in a DCOM, because it adds a layer of charm and uniqueness that a lot of DCOM characters can lack sometimes. This was also the case for Under Wraps, and I like how his mom didn't even notice that a real mummy was in his room because it was just that elaborately decorated all the time. Also, it's nice to see the mom have her own character arc throughout the film. Usually I'm upset when parents have storylines in these movies because, like, it's not really about them, but in this case, it was actually well done, so I appreciated it. The actress was really fun to watch, and she did a really good job of showing how the character needed to rediscover herself after trying to raise all of her 3 kids and putting her passions aside to be able to do that. Oh yeah, I forgot. She has a younger child who is constantly being ignored by the siblings and is later recruited by the vampire hunter to take down the vampire, who is planning on making their mom his vampire queen. But she's a strong, independent woman who turns him down even after he lies to her, pretending that he likes all of her interests. They gave her interests in the movie and a personality. How wonderful is that? I expect so little from the adult characters in these movies, so getting some plot development with her was nice to see. There's not as many vampire shenanigans as you'd think there'd be, but that's okay. It didn't seem to mind me all that much. Overall, Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire is a fine movie. It's a great watch for the holiday. I put this on in October and I watched it with my dad and he enjoyed it just fine. It's not as good as Mabav, but not much else is, so there you go. Two Halloween movies in 1 year, I see. Let's go. I'll be honest with you guys, I went into Phantom of the Megaplex with steep expectations. I was secretly hoping that this film was going to become one of my favorite DCOMs ever. I was so excited to sit down and write about how this film was just so campy and amazing, and I would hoped it would end up sneaking into my top 5 without anyone realizing. However, that doesn't seem to be the case. I do like this movie more than the other ones from this year. It's definitely one of the better movies from this era, but the storytelling is just a bit too sloppy for me to fully enjoy. Phantom of the Megaplex follows a hardworking 17-year-old named Pete, who has already become assistant manager at his town's movie theater Megaplex. On the night that the theater is hosting a huge movie premiere, strange occurrences start happening all around the Megaplex, so it's up for the crew to figure out what's going on before the premiere is ruined. There's narration at the beginning of this film and it never comes back again, which is a huge movie pet peeve of mine, and the narration introduces all of these teenage characters who work at the Megaplex like they're actually going to mean anything in the end. It's Alley Cat Strike syndrome all over again because I assumed the ensemble cast would be the central focus of the film at the start, but then they threw Pete's family into the mix and the entire heart of the movie gets muddled very quickly. I think they should have picked one main character's life to focus on, his family or his co-workers, and stuck with that. I will say I was not expecting the twist villain reveal at the ending, although maybe I just wasn't paying that much attention. So I like the reveal of the manager being the Phantom all along, who was a victim of nepotism and didn't get the promotion he was expecting after making being manager of the theater his literal personality. Also, Mickey Rooney is in this film. That guy from the golden age of Hollywood that did all those movies with Judy Garland is just randomly in this movie as an old man. So that was interesting to see, I guess. I feel like the movie would have been much more enjoyable if it had leaned into the Scooby-Doo aspects more often. It would have been much more fun if it just focused on a bunch of unique teenagers trying their best to work at their shitty jobs at this very busy movie theater and figure out who the Phantom is. Again, I don't mind this movie taking the family angle if that's what they were going for, but then why do the narration where they introduce all of the theater workers if they're only going to have 30 seconds of screen time each? I must stop or else I'll end up making an hour-long video just on this movie alone. Overall, Phantom of the Megaplex is a fine movie. There are a lot of elements that I find really fun, but there are narrative problems that make it just not as much of an enjoyable experience. Let's move on to the final movie of the year 2000. This moment cannot come sooner.
It snowed? In Los Angeles?
I told you global warming was bogus.
Stop watching Fox News.
No, it's fair and balanced.
There's nothing I like more than watching a movie titled The Ultimate Christmas Present in the middle of spring. I realize now that this video is going to be coming out around December and Christmas time, so talking about these holiday movies isn't going to feel as weird as it does now, a whole 6 months away from the Christmas season, but that's alright. The Ultimate Christmas Present follows Allie and Sam, two girls who feel like their Christmas has been ruined because of their respective families all working instead of being with them for the holidays. While soaking, they come across a weather machine that was a failed invention from Santa Claus, who inevitably lives in a shack in the woods in Los Angeles, California. Do woods exist in LA? Anyways. The girls use the weather machine to have their families snowed in for Christmas so they can spend time together. There's also this evil weatherman who tries to track down all of the weather phenomenon, all while the snowstorm spreads and traps Allie's dad in San Francisco, meaning he won't be home for Christmas. Oh no! Evil weatherman is able to track the weather machine down and attempts to steal it for personal gain, but his plans get foiled by Santa Claus himself when he and the elves track down the girls as well. Santa, Allie, and Sam work together to fix the weather machine, and Santa's elves are able to bring Allie's father home for the holidays. Allie is kind of a sucky kid who only cares about being popular and the most modern accessories, and slacks off of school to focus on attending the hottest Christmas party of the year, hosted by the most popular kid in school, which of course gets cancelled because of the snowstorm. She's literally on the naughty list, which is how Santa tracks her down, using her shoe print as a hint. So after seeing all of the pain and suffering she caused with an extreme blizzard in the fucking desert, she gets humbled real quick and learns to be less of a shit kicker. Overall, there are too many odd elements of the story and characters that make this movie not want to add to my Christmas watch list. The evil weatherman, whose name is Edwin by the way, seems to get in the way of the actual main conflict, which is the fact that Allie is a bad person and she needs to overcome committing ecological terrorism. Also, maybe Santa shouldn't throw away his failed experiments in a trash can out where anyone can just grab them. I would only recommend this movie if you're out of Christmas movies to watch, which I doubt since they make like 2,000 of them every year. Or if you're really interested in the film catalog of Brenda Song, then maybe give it a watch. I don't really see the point of rehashing this movie and bringing it out of decom purgatory just for a quick laugh. Edit, I actually did end up putting this movie on when I was cooking Thanksgiving dinner. I'm not sure what happened to me, but I really softened on this film and enjoyed watching it while I roasted my turkey. Not changing the review though, I'd still rank it kinda low because of my initial reaction.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal.
Ah yes, just what I wanted, another Zenon movie. Honestly, I tried to go in with high spirits and be open to Zenon, the zequel, and overall I thought it was just okay. This is another film I watched really late at night, so I was really sleep deprived, which may have helped sell the magic for me, who knows. Zenon, the zequel, follows Zenon again and a newly recasted Nebula, along with the return of Margie, who is staying on the space station with her father, General Hammond. The space station she was born and raised on is apparently being shut down because of damages it faced in the last movie, so Zenon must sneak back to Earth to save her space station and also contact aliens? Apparently aliens are attempting to contact Zenon, which makes her think that they want to meet Protozoa, the pop star from the last movie who's been stuck with writer's block Major, and they all head out to the moon to meet up with the aliens. Margie sneaks along back to Earth, which could get Zenon in big trouble since she was supposed to watch over her on the space station, but throughout this road trip setup, they bicker and eventually grow to become friends. Maybe somewhat frenemies, but definitely a nicer rapport than they had before. Also, Zenon's got a new love interest in this one. The guy from the first movie, with no dialogue, just breaks up with her within the first 5 minutes. I like this new guy a lot better anyways. He's a nerdy type who is obsessed with proving that aliens are real, while everyone just thinks he's crazy. Speaking of aliens, they were apparently just lost and too polite to just steal the map from the humans, so they ask for directions and thank Zenon for her help by repairing the space station so it won't be demolished. The stakes feel really low in this one. More of the drama is placed on whether Margie and Zenon can get along, so the aliens and the space station being evacuated just don't feel as important when watching it in my opinion. But I actually don't mind that. I would much rather they focus on the characters than the crazy space plot, even though that sounds counterintuitive because it's like, why not just have it be set in the modern day? But anyways. I don't hate this decom as much as the previous one, honestly. This is much more of your average decom fare, and I just ended up being more bored than anything else. Then again, I was really tired when I watched this since it was like 2 in the morning and I couldn't fall asleep, so I decided to take a crack at my DCOM watch list for a few hours, hoping that would help me pass out. And it did. A lot of these movies just really are that boring. I have no idea where it's going to end up in the ranking, probably near the bottom middle for just being okay. I really don't mean to offend any Zenon lovers out there. If you love this movie, then I'm happy for you.
I thank you for your pains.
Finally, a queer DCOM. I mean, we've definitely had some in the past, but this one really takes it to the next level. Motocrossed is about Andrea Andy Carson and her twin brother Andrew, and is a loose adaptation of the Shakespeare play Twelfth Night. Fun fact, Twelfth Night is my favorite Shakespeare play, so this movie was a very exciting watch for me. It's like 2 of my special interests kissing and hugging on stage. Both of them are motocross experts, but Andy hasn't been allowed to race because her father thinks it's too dangerous of a sport for a girl to be playing. Andrew was working towards getting a sponsorship to continue his motocrossing career, but he ends up hurting his knee when the 2 of them are racing together and is unable to compete in the next competition where there were sponsors lined up to see him. Andy decides to take his place, mainly out of guilt, cutting off all of her hair and donning his uniform. The mother finds out and secretly agrees to let her race, all while the dad is in France looking for a replacement racer for his son in the meantime. Andy is doing well in the race and ends up falling for a guy named Dean competing in a different division, but she has to keep her feelings secret because she's a guy. There's a girl that Dean likes, so he convinces Andy to hype him up to her so she'll go on a date with him. The dad brings home some French asshole who's sexist and rude to both of the twins, but the dad refuses to fire him because he's too scared of seeing his kids get hurt, with Andy being a girl and Andrew still being injured. Eventually, though, the father does fire the annoying French guy, but he's still set to compete in the race, now with a rival family as his backers. Andy beats him and she gets first place, but he reveals the secret that she's pretending to be her brother and that it's against the rules for a girl to race. It isn't actually, and she didn't lie on her applications since she put down Andy has her name, which can count as a nickname for both of their names. So she gets to keep her title and the family gets sponsored by a woman after seeing her determination and quote-unquote girl power. Twelfth Night is always going to be a queer play because of the cross-dressing, and any adaptation of it is going to be much of the same. I'm a big fan of this movie, not only because of its adaptational status, but also because I just find motocrossing to be much more of an interesting sport than all of the other ones we've talked about so far. How much I enjoy sports movie is going to depend on how much I'd like or dislike the sport the movie's about. Motorcycles are cool when they go up and over dirt hills, so I had a fun time watching this movie when it was on my screen. My lizard brain just works like that. And I hope this movie made a lot of people realize they were trans, so it's going pretty high up in the ranking because of that.
This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say the leprechaun looks like. Others find it hard to believe and have come up with their own theories and explanations for the image.
Probably one of the weirdest DCOMs of all time, honestly. This takes the cake over The Other Me. The Luck of the Irish is like if someone grabbed a list of bad movie ideas out of a hat and decided to actually make one of them. I know Disney Channel is always trying to make seasonal films when they can, but I think St. Patrick's Day was one of the holidays they could have just skipped. The Luck of the Irish follows 15-year-old Kyle Johnson, who is incredibly lucky at everything he does in life with his lucky gold coin by his side. With Heritage Day approaching at school, Kyle wants to do a presentation on his heritage. The only problem is that he has no idea what his heritage is, and his parents are extremely cagey about it when he asks. His father changed his last name and everything. This shit is serious. At the local Irish fair in town, he notices that his lucky coin is the same as some other guy who's selling him at a festival, and when he's knocked to the ground, his coin is hawked without him knowing. The next morning, he notices that he's getting shorter, his hair is turning red, and all of a sudden his mother is extremely open about the fact that he's Irish, and by the time he's back from school, she's shrunk down to about 1 foot tall. She reveals that they're both leprechauns, and that she disowned her father after he disapproved of her mixed marriage to Kyle's father, who is a human. Was she 1 foot tall when they met? I'm not going to question it. Kyle then goes to his grandfather, who runs a potato chip factory in town, and explains that the family coin must be worn by the youngest member in the family so they can all pass as human. and that an evil leprechaun named Seamus stole the coin at the fair, and they have to chase him down to get the coin back. Kyle gets the coin back from Seamus, but he refuses to give Riley back, so they do a tiebreaker game of basketball. Yep, this movie has been a basketball movie the whole time. I'm genuinely shocked that this movie even got made, honestly. I'm not sure how the Irish feel about their representation in this movie, but it's not like leprechauns are as renowned as mythical creatures the same way like Santa Claus is or anything like that. So making a St. Patrick's Day movie about leprechauns is just so bizarre to me, and the plot is just wacky enough to be way too absurd. It's not like this kid just found out he was Superman or something. Why do they think that a Spider-Man type plot would be good for a leprechaun plot? They should have just gone the Wizards of Waverly Place route for this and made Kyle always know that he's a leprechaun and feeling awkward about his heritage because of that, and throughout the journey he learns to love his culture by the end. Although, it probably isn't good optics to make the main character hate the fact that he's Irish American and then resolve it at the end, so maybe this idea is just cursed and shouldn't have been done. At the end, Kyle does his Heritage Day presentation and learns to love being Irish, and probably wakes up in a cold sweat randomly at night when he remembers he's actually a leprechaun and has trouble falling back to sleep afterwards. This movie is cursed, and I wish I never had to watch it. Hounded is a unique exercise in torture. I think the Disney Channel is trying to kill me in this year of 2001. Hounded follows a down-on-his-luck kid and watches him get tortured for 80+ minutes. 13-year-old Jay Martin's mother is going out of town, and his older brother, who he has a strained relationship with, is coming home from military academy where he's a sergeant to take care of him while their mom is gone. Jay isn't the most wealthy, and he goes to a prestigious academy that he wants to continue into in high school. But he's going to need a scholarship to attend. If he doesn't get the scholarship, then he'll have to attend the military academy that his brother works at, which is his worst nightmare since he wants to study art and be an artist. The headmaster of his school wants his son, played by Shia LaBeouf, to win the scholarship, even though they are extremely rich and they don't need the money, it's just purely for clout. Headmaster Ward Van Busen lets his son Ronnie plagiarize Jay's speech, and when Ronnie wins the scholarship and just throws it away because he doesn't even care about it, Jay, even though he's very weary towards doing it, decides to try and steal the scholarship and get his presentation back to prove that it was stolen in the first place, only for the Van Dusen's dog to follow him home and rip up everything in his house to shreds, and terrorize him to the point where it's just not fun to watch. As the house is trashed, Jay's brother Mike arrives and sees the absolute hell that has become of their childhood home, and he thinks that Jay did all of it. Their relationship is generally strained because of their father's death, which he was also a military man, and Mike thinks that Jay should fall in line with the military instead of being an artist. Eventually, they work things out and stop fighting, and they devise a plan to get back at the Van Dusens for literally ruining Jay's life all in the span of a few hours. They frame Ronnie for the family dog being missing and get him sent to the military school where Mike works at to essentially be tortured. They get Ward demoted to secretary, and they get the scholarship competition to be opened back up so Jay can get his proper credit and the money he needs to attend the academy. Also, the dog is expecting puppies, and Jay gets to keep one. How great. Overall, I don't get the satisfaction I'm supposed to from the Martins getting revenge on the Van Dusens, because the crime far outweighs the punishment in my opinion. Like, this family should have been flattened by an anvil or something, because the sheer amount of time devoted to watching Jay's life crumble before his eyes is enough to make me want to turn off this movie and scream into a pillow. Jay is never depicted as anything other than the most nicest, sweetest, most intelligent, kind kid there ever was. And what they do to him is just brutal. I couldn't stand it. I honestly kind of hate this movie. It's horrible, and I don't want to think about it anymore. Anyways, Hounded is a weird and bad movie that makes me want to die. Bottom of the list. I had a lot of fun with Jett Jackson the movie. That is, when I could find it. Yeah, the next two films on this list are not currently, at the time of me watching them, on Disney+, so I had to find them elsewhere. I've never seen the Jett Jackson TV show before, so I don't know what the normal status quo is for the show, but I was still able to enjoy this plot anyways. Jett Jackson the movie follows the titular Jett Jackson as he balances work and life on acting on a famous TV show and being a normal kid who attends high school. I'm assuming that's what his normal MO is throughout the show as well. It really shows the intense behind-the-scenes decisions and emotions that are put on a child star, with Jett deciding that he doesn't want to work on the show anymore after learning that they plan on renewing the show for another 3 seasons. He has to deal with both the fan upset along with the adult workers being mad that they're going to lose their jobs, since the majority of their town in North Carolina is employed by the TV show. That's a lot of shit to put on a kid, and a lot of children actually go through this. Children that the Disney Channel put them through. The film takes a proper sci-fi twist when he switches realities with his character that he plays on the show, Silverstone, and the two must figure out how to switch back and survive their new worlds. Both characters learn to appreciate what each other has and their struggles, which is cool to see. But upon learning that Silverstone is real and switching back to their real lives, Jett sees that since he's gonna quit the show, they wrote the episode they were filming to be the finale where Silverstone dies, which means that the real life person will actually be killed. He travels back to the fictional universe to help defeat the evil villain that he was fighting earlier on, and Jett decides to keep playing the character and not quit the show. They sold the story beat pretty well in the movie, but after stewing on it, it kind of upsets me that his character has to continue being an actor even though his desire was to be a normal kid, and that overtook his desire to be on the show. And all the backlash he faced because of that in the narrative, it just feels like they had to compromise. Overall, I did enjoy Jett Jackson the movie, and I recommend people check it out if they want to understand a key part of Disney Channel's history. It's a shame that Lee Thompson Young passed away recently because he was a real talent and he gave a lot of charisma and range in this one thing I've seen from him.
Guys, there's somebody I'd like you to meet.
The fuck am I supposed to do with The Genie Project? The Jett Jackson movie and this one are both not on Disney+, so after the struggle it was to dig for both of these films, I took a decent break in between my watch list and took a breather. The Genie Project follows the Archibald family as the father, Hugo, brings home exotic animals on the regular because of his job as a wildlife doctor. That is, when he is home. He's gone more often than not, and his 2 kids, especially his son Andrew, seem to resent him for not being home often. Dr. Archibald's most recent excursion leads him to find Jennie, a chimpanzee who they decide to start teaching sign language so she can communicate with humans. Andrew and his sister become very attached to Jennie, and they all hang out and partake in some comic books and baseball from time to time. There's also harsh parts of Jennie's relationship with the family throughout the entire story, including the outside world's disapproval of Jennie being treated like she's part of the family, plus her difficulty with following the rules of human society, because she's a monkey. Dr. Prentice is the person teaching Jennie sign language, and she's seen as one of the biggest antagonizing forces in getting Jennie taken away from the family and put in a lab with other chimpanzees. She does eventually go too far in her conflict with the human world, and eventually the family has to re-socialize Jennie back into chimpanzee society where she came from. Andrew gives a tearful goodbye, and hopefully his father learns to be a more active presence in his kids' lives. This movie is another example of just a generic TV movie that is way too melodramatic and serious for its own good, and it really doesn't fit in the DCOM mold of things. I was not into this thing the entire time I was watching it. I do not recommend this movie, and I could even go as far to say as it's one of my least movies in the list so far, just because I do not appreciate of this DCOM status quo. Let's swiftly move on to the next one, please. I was dreading watching Jumping Ship for a while now, but it actually ended up being a welcomed surprise. Just for some context, before this movie is when I took a really long break in my watch list, and this was the last one before I absolutely sprinted through the rest of these movies in the span of a few months. Like I said earlier, the last 2 movies were hard to find and in annoyingly low quality, so afterwards I just settled on writing the script like crazy and slowly slipping into a caffeine addiction. Funnily enough, I actually ended up watching this movie at my grandma's house, alone, while she was out in town. That's funny because this is actually a sequel to the movie Horse Sense, which is a movie I described as being perfect to watch with your grandma, only to pause so you can go do the laundry or something. This being a sequel to Horse Sense is what made me dread it, honestly, but I actually really enjoyed this movie quite a lot. Most notably, there's another Lawrence brother in it. Michael is still a preppy douchebag, just slightly nicer, yet unwilling to get a job and work for his own money. Tommy is dealing with the problem of his mother meeting another man, who he's afraid is trying to replace the memory of his father in real life. He isn't, by the way, he's just a chill guy who likes to carve wood. Michael and Tommy are going on vacation to Australia, but accidentally happen to hire a junker boat run by the only American on the entire island probably, and his name is Jake. They attempt to have fun on the boat even though tensions are high. Because Michael is a beacon of annoying California stereotypes, he is quickly spotted by a trio of modern-day pirates, and they chase them through the sea until they have to crash on a small island to avoid being killed by them. The movie then becomes an island survival piece, with Jake now being the one to take place in leadership since he knows all about the sea and island survival. This movie is much more thrilling than the previous installment, and I honestly really liked the camera work they done with the underwater shots and ocean shots. It all looked pretty decent for a TV movie in my opinion. This is one of the better examples of what a TV movie could be, something with a low budget and decent production design that follows interesting characters with well-developed backstories and an interesting plot. So I'm not going to complain about this being on the list. Oh, and they escape from the pirates and the island if that wasn't obvious. The movie concludes the story for all of them pretty well. Michael realizes the meaning of life and decides to start working for his father's law firm on his way to becoming a lawyer. And all three of them buy the pirate's boat that they used to escape off the island from together, which Jake can now use to charter like he had done before, since his original junker boat that he ran with his dead father and secretly resented had sunk when they crash landed. His character really does have as much development as the other two, only with one movie to boot. Also, Tommy learns to stop being a dick to his mom's new boyfriend now that he almost died. Nothing like the quick fear of one's life to sort out all your problems at home, huh? Jumping Ship is pretty good. I'm probably never gonna watch it again, but it gave me a good cheer when getting through this absolute slog of an era. When I was gathering clips of random DCOMs for the introduction of this video, I watched the first 3 minutes of The Poof Point, and have been dreading to watch it this whole time. Now that I've seen the movie, I still have many questions, but I'm not as nearly horrified as I thought I was going to be in the beginning. The Poof Point follows the Ballard family, with two super genius science parents and their average kids who just want an average life, as they graduate middle school ? And their parents create a time machine. An important piece of their machine is removed by their dog, just because he wants to play fetch and everyone is ignoring him. So the machine backfires and the goldfish they were experimenting on actually start to de-age. They age backwards until before they were born, which is called the Poof Point, because they just poof out of existence afterwards. When attempting the experiment again, the parents get transformed instead, so they end up regressing to half their age, when they were just 21. Slowly over the course of the movie, they continue to de-age by half, going from 14 to 7 to 2 and onward. And their not brainy kids have to figure out how to fix them before the Poof Point. I'm not sure what it is about the Disney Channel constantly subjecting Taj Mahari's character to torment in these movies, but they do it a lot. It's not as bad as it was in Hounded, but a lot of the antics that the parents get up to as they're de-aging get tiring over time. In the end, the kids are able to understand and relate to their parents on a deeper level. They learn that before they became heady scientist parents, they were just normal kids in their lives. And the parents learn that even though they care a lot about their experiments, they need to focus on connecting and relating to their kids. It's a fine enough movie, but the antics they used to pad the runtime really stressed me out and put me off wanting to go back and watch it again. Kind of soured on this as time went on, but it's honestly not all that worth remembering or getting worked up over.
You motherfucking worthless cocksucker.
Be silent!
Oh!
Since we've established this as a safe space, I feel comfortable in saying that Halloweentown 2: Kalabar's Revenge was one of my favorite Halloween movies growing up, despite constantly hearing about how supposedly bad it is. So what did I think about it all these years later? It still rocks, y'all, I'm not gonna lie. With a stellar main cast of characters that you actually care about, and a fun plot that doesn't weigh down the story too much, you get an exciting and fun Halloween movie for people to watch. Halloweentown 2: Kalabar's Revenge follows Marnie and her family again as it's Halloween. But this time they've embraced the holiday and are throwing a party for the neighborhood to enjoy. However, things aren't picture perfect quite yet, since Marnie and her mother still fight on how Marnie should be living her life, and Agatha is a bit homesick after being gone from Halloweentown for a full year, which has been many, many years in the town itself. Marnie meets a cute guy named Cal, and his father woos her mother, and she takes him back to her grandmother's room even though she's not supposed to, and yeah, this guy's evil as hell. He steals her grandmother's book using magic. Marnie and G-Ma decide to go visit Halloweentown for a little bit, and the entire place is cold and gray. Cal is Kalabar's secret son, and he wants to turn the monsters into humans and the humans into monsters, as revenge for his father's death in the previous movie and how humans have treated monsters for many years now. Marnie is able to stop him and, with the help of her family, casts a spell to keep the portal open year-round instead of just on Halloween Day. I know a lot of people say this movie is bad, but I would heavily disagree. I would make sure to watch it every year for Halloween along with the first one, and I think Marnie really sticks out as a confident and smart main character, which I really appreciate. I think some people dislike the villain, which is completely fair, but the connection to Kalabar is perfectly fine with me, plus the actors have a really good chemistry together, so it makes their scenes very enjoyable to watch. Pretty sure these two are together in real life, so I guess that makes sense then. I like that things have evolved and escalated from film to film, which really makes worth watching all of the installments, and I'll definitely have more to say about this with the third movie. Overall, I really enjoyed Halloweentown 2: Kalabar's Revenge, and I would recommend it along with the entire trilogy, which I will clarify and continue to talk about once we get to those movies. But either way, good movie, so glad I got to rewatch it for this video again. It's going pretty high in the ranking.
Look, whatever St. Mark's is giving you, we'll double it.
You can double eternal salvation?
Yes, I can.
This movie has Bryan Cranston in it? Why did no one tell me there was a decom with Bryan Cranston in it? Twas the Night is an immediate Christmas movie classic in my books now. I can't believe it's taken me this long to actually watch it. I wasn't even peeved that I had to watch this movie in the middle of summer, it was just that much fun. Twas the Night follows 14-year-old huckster Danny, who follows in his uncle Nick's influence in scamming people to get his way. His younger sister is a super genius, and his little brother is gullible and impressionable, so he's constantly pulling the wool over his eyes to get his way. We learn that Nick has scammed a group of guys out of $30,000 and they've hacked his computer and later broken into his home to get the money back. Nick already lost it all in bad investments, so he runs away to his brother's house to evade their large bodyguard from smashing him to bits, all under the ruse that he just wants to visit his family for the holidays. He shuts down the internet connection with a virus in the entire surrounding area to keep him safe, but this ends up crashing Santa's sleigh. He had just made the conversion to digital, by the way. They knock Santa out when they think he's a burglar, and Nick steals the tech that can freeze time and shrink presents down to fit in someone's pocket. Danny suggests that they try and save Christmas by delivering everyone's presents with Santa's sleigh, and Nick agrees, but is actually using it as a ploy to steal from people's houses to make up for his debts. Danny figures him out and ditches him to continue with the good work, all while his little sister and brother work with Santa to get a supercomputer to get control of the sleigh again. The guys looking for Nick go to his brother's house, and Nick has to go rescue them from his debt collectors and apologizes to Santa for being a bad guy. His heroism at the end causes Santa to give him a present that he's always wanted, a guitar so he can live out his rock star fantasies. Danny and Nick have such a fun rapport with each other, and Danny is an actual realistic 14-year-old, feeling like he's a grown-up who understands the world, even though he actually knows little, and is surprised when his uncle is using the whole Santa getting knocked out thing to his advantage. Both his performance and Bryan Cranston's are real standouts of the film. Seriously, shout out to Cranston. He's pretty much the only reason to watch this movie anyways. He gives such an interesting and fun performance that gives depth to an otherwise surface-level anti-hero. Twas the Night was a really fun surprise, and I'm really glad I got to discover it with this watch-through. I highly recommend this movie in general, but especially if you need a Christmas movie to watch this year. I can see this movie being overshadowed by the other ones in the future, but for now, it's definitely in my top 10. Really liked this thing.
Louise, what did you get?
Highlights, just around my face.
You will take them again and do better.
I will take them again and get my nose done.
Dear God, another basketball movie. We still have so many more to talk about later on too. I can't believe I'm going to have to subject myself to all of this. Double Teamed follows the real-life story of two tall twin basketball players as they move to a new school and attempt to adapt to the shift. The twins are supposed to be in high school, I think, but they are very much played by adult actors because I guess it was hard to find actual teenage girls who are over 6 feet tall. The family is somewhat middle class, but their dad moves them from a small Catholic school to a mega public school where all the rich families take their kids, which means that they have to move from their comfortable sleepy suburb to a tiny apartment in the thick of the city. Their father is only doing this because he wants access to sports scouts for the girls that they weren't getting at their old school, and he wants them to get scholarships for college. He puts a lot of pressure on them to be talented athletes, and he realizes over time that he needs to let them have fun and relax every once in a while. We've seen this side plot in like 10 other DCOMs. The girls first start out as volleyball players, but in the off-season they're recommended to try out women's basketball because of their heights. And the team captain in specific is rude to them because she doesn't want to be usurped in the team and feels threatened. She bullies them because her home life is bad. Oh wow, that's cliche number 2. The next cliche is the opposite twins trope, where one is extremely bubbly and one is extremely serious. The bubbly one wants to try out for the school play, but her father is against it because, say it with me now, it can conflict with sports. The serious one ends up training too hard and sprains her ankle, and is out for the final game for the most of it until the last minute when she takes off her brace and helps score the winning goal. Do not do this, by the way. If you have a sports-related injury, do not play anyways. You could cause permanent damage to yourself, and I wish Disney Channel did not have this element be framed as a winning, shining aspect of the movie. I can see this movie being inspiring for girls out there who are really tall, because as someone who was taller than most of their friends, I can kind of relate. It's a whole lot better than the movie Tall Girl, I can at least say that. Double Teamed is a very fine and generic, not at all revolutionary or important movie in my opinion, and you can totally skip it. Shout out to the Jellyfish Dance song being played at the end though, that was fun to witness, completely unironically at that.
I think they sent me to the wrong place.
Uh-huh.
I bet a lot of you guys remember Cadet Kelly because it stars Hilary Duff and Christy Carson Romano. What you guys probably don't know about this movie is that it's military propaganda. Cadet Kelly follows Kelly, an art school hippie high schooler whose mother gets engaged to a military man. They then move out of New York into a military school base, where she must now attend. Her father is a similarly hippie photographer who she loves to spend time with when she's not with her lawyer mom who can't cook. As a free-spirited girl, she struggles with the harsh and rigid structure of military school, but over time she grows the strength to go through their obstacle courses and fight back against the cadet Captain Jennifer. Eventually she learns about the drill team and baton throwing, and then all of a sudden the movie converts to a drill team sports movie, which is what it is now going to be about. She joins the drill team, she competes in a competition, she saves her dad from falling off a cliff, all true rites of passage for a young girl to experience. I can see why this movie has been heralded as so iconic because of its central conceit of putting Hilary Duff in camo pants and watching her roll around in mud. But once that's done, we're only 30 minutes into the movie. It feels like they had to Frankenstein some random plots onto there, just to make it a full-length movie. I really like Hilary Duff, very similar to Kimberly J. Brown. She does the Disney ingenue girl thing very, very well. I like the stylings that they went for with her character, and I really appreciate that she wanted to be an individual and didn't want to just blend in with the background of everybody else. But the fact that that isn't acknowledged or established later on in the movie proves to me that this is military propaganda. Don't listen to them, kids. Considering this movie came out in March of 2002, it wouldn't surprise me if this movie was inspired by the 9/11 terrorist attack to get people to want to enlist and join up in the military because a war was starting. That just makes me feel gross and disgusting, so I don't really want to recommend Cadet Kelly to you, but it is somewhat inoffensive if you don't look at the greater context of its creation. It's probably going to go near the middle to the bottom of the ranking. No offense, Hilary Duff, I like you, but I don't like military movies. They're just not for me.
You want to see the most beautiful thing I've ever filmed?
I don't know how to feel about True Confessions. On one hand, I want to say it's good and just not for me, but on the other, I want to call it problematic. I genuinely don't know if this movie and its depiction of children with learning disabilities is accurate or inoffensive, so I'll leave it up for y'all to decide. True Confessions follows True, a teenage girl who loves TV and the world of filmmaking, who aspires to direct her own TV show. When there's a short film contest being held by their local TV station, she decides to make a documentary about her twin brother Eddie, played by Shia LaBeouf. Eddie has an undisclosed learning disability that True has many feelings about, and it's her perspective that we get into Eddie's life and what it's like to be him. She is angry that her parents focus more on him because of his special needs that need to be met, and is upset that people call him slurs and treat him badly at school. True wins the short film contest, and her film is aired on TV, which gives people a new appreciation for the two of them and their lives. Also, their dad is a surgeon who is never home, and when he is, he's usually getting mad at Eddie for breaking something or having a meltdown, which happens quite often because apparently none of them know how to treat him and make him feel comfortable. The dad learns to be more active in his kids' lives and not lash out in anger at them, and at the very end, we get a somewhat somber moment where True talks about how she'll grow up and be an adult and her brother will stay the exact same. But in the final scene, we see Eddie reflect on their relationship, saying how he doesn't need their relationship to change and that they can just continue to be themselves. I know I said earlier I wasn't going to comment on this type of plotline, but I now have some newfound opinions that I want to chew on while we talk about this movie further. It's a little weird that so many of these movies with characters that have disabilities always have plotlines that primarily focus on characters who don't have those disabilities, who are apparently the ones being more greatly impacted by the disability than the people who actually have them. It wasn't as prominent in the movie Miracle on Lane 2, but this similar quirk was a plotline in that film before the soapbox racing thing relatively started late into the film's runtime. It's almost like the writers of these movies think that kids with disabilities don't watch the Disney Channel, or that they have no idea how to portray a main character with disabilities, so they limit their own character development and make it about the one thing they know, which is how another person is affected by it. It's an issue of not having insight into these disabilities in the writer's room and not putting the effort into giving more fleshed out experience for these characters and focusing on everyone else as a way of lampshading. I'm really glad we're somewhat past this type of portrayal in media because it's both awkward for me to talk about and just bad storytelling at the end of the day. I didn't like True Confessions all that much because it made me think about this problem that pervades in Hollywood and it made me sad and uncomfortable, and not in a good way. It's going near the bottom of the ranking, sorry. Although if you've seen this movie, I would love to hear what you think about it.
But, who are these two?
Don't you recognize them, Sheriff?
Why, it's Zeb and Zeke.
Thank goodness this movie is really good. I was getting really sad there for a second. Get a Clue might be one of my favorites so far. It was just so fun, campy, and delightful. Get a Clue follows Lindsay Lohan as Lexi, one of the wealthy elite of Manhattan, New York. She goes to a prestigious academy and is head of the school newspaper along with her best friend, played by Brenda Song. Lexi is able to get one of her articles in the actual local paper, which everyone applauds and praises her for. With some spy equipment, she was able to get an exclusive photo of apparently two of her teachers having an affair, but this article leads to one of them going missing, so now the kids all band together to try and figure out what happened to their missing teacher. It's a very fun and exciting mystery that I'm not going to spoil the whole thing for because it's quite convoluted and hard to explain, at least in a timely fashion, but at the end of the day, we learn who the real culprit is of this missing identity, and we get to see all of these groups of characters bond. There's this kid Jack, who is the editor of the school newspaper and is kind of mean to Lexi, which she doesn't understand because everyone loves her. We learn that Jack is somewhat middle class, maybe even poor, and has a scholarship to the academy, so he's not a rich kid like the rest of them. And him and Lexi grow a really nice bond with each other, and they might even be love interests, maybe? Lexi gains a new appreciation and understanding of the world because she just very much lived in like a high-class Prada bubble, and she evolves and changes as a character, which is what I like to see in these movies. I like how the class disparities are dealt with in this film. Both characters realize that they come from different backgrounds, and while it is anecdotally something that they comment on, it isn't like this big serious thing that's like very cliche and awkwardly written. It feels very realistic to how a bunch of kids would interact with this kind of element, and it's not the central focus of the story, the mystery is. So overall, I really liked Get a Clue, and I would highly recommend you check it out if you haven't yet. It is just so fun, and also the fashion is absolutely amazing. I cannot believe they got these kids in the most stylish Y2K outfits of all time. It's gonna go pretty high in the ranking, I think even in my top 10 so far. We got another banger here, guys. Gotta Kick It Up is so good. This is, of course, because of my personal bias, but, outside of that, I can still see it as a very fun children's movie. Gotta Kick It Up follows a group of Latina middle schoolers who embark on joining and starting a dance team. Literally only one of them can dance, but they want to find some sort of outside curricular activity that they can do together. They recruit their new science teacher, who apparently was a professionally trained dancer at Juilliard, who quit and then started in finance, which she also quit and is now a high school teacher at a very low-income school. It's a minority-majority school, and because of that, a lot of the extracurriculars and clubs are underfunded. So they struggle to get dance outfits and get bus money to get to competitions. But the power of friendship and dance pushes them through and they get to a final competition. Even though this is an ensemble film, one of the more main characters is Daisy, and she has to struggle with her boyfriend, who has dropped out of high school and is expecting her to do the same. She realizes that she has a real talent for dancing and a real passion, and she's even has the opportunity to attend a dance school. So she has to balance following her dreams and being realistic about what she can actually do with her life. For a bit there, because of her ambitions, her boyfriend breaks up with her, but then he realizes that she is trying to find herself still because they're still all very young, and they're able to work it out. America Ferrera is also in this movie, and she plays Yolanda, who is a plus-sized girl and is somewhat made fun of because of that. There's also a smart girl, and there's a girl who doesn't really speak much English. Overall, it's a very strong ensemble cast, and we really get to understand and know more about all of these characters. You've heard me complain about ensemble DCOMs before, where they have a main character and then their friends, and then their friends just get no development at all, and it's like, why are they even here? The main group of kids in the dance team are very well fleshed out and developed, and we understand their struggles and motivations, and that's literally the bare minimum for a movie, so I really appreciate that. I'll say right now, all of my friends when I was this age looked exactly like these kids do, and my school looked exactly like that, so the setting was very, very relatable to me, and I think that added to my enjoyment. I'm surprised I'd never seen Gotta Kick It Up before. I definitely heard about it, but I'm glad I got to watch it for this watch through. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't yet. Good movie.
Captain, my captain.
Sit down, Mr. Anderson.
And just when I thought A Ring of Endless Light was going to be too classy for me, we got the classic, age-old trick of both animal communication and love triangles to bring us right back into DCOM territory. Misha Barton plays 16-year-old Vicky Austin. Her, along with her little sister Susie and little brother Rob, all go visit their grandfather who lives on an island. Her grandfather was a reverend who is now retired and is also fighting some mysterious illness, but he tries to pretend that he's doing just fine. She immediately meets two hot Disney ingenue young boys who can both be perfect love interests for her. A rich kid with a bad parent named Zach, and an aquatic research aide named Adam. She meets Adam when she goes to an aquatic research center, and they are working on a dolphin named Basil. I think they pronounce it Basil, I don't know. But she discovers that she can communicate with the dolphins. Welcome back, Ready to Run. So she's there mentally talking to dolphins and also dealing with the fact that her grandfather's going to die. He eventually admits that he has leukemia. He tries to imbue her with his wisdom before he passes away. Zach and Adam have a rivalry because they both are after her affections. And at first she goes for Zach, but then after a beautiful bonfire on the beach, she kisses Adam. And it seems like at the end, Adam wins out. This is around the time that the grandpa dies, and at that point they end up leaving for the summer, more wise and more aware of things. This movie is weird because it feels like the point was to make a movie about helping kids cope with the fact that their grandparents and people that they care about in their lives will die. I think it's a good topic for children's movies, especially if you're going to go in a little more classy direction like this one does. But then it mixes in the love triangle stuff and the dolphin stuff, and honestly, I really think that they could have picked one and made a whole movie on just that, instead of trying to fit all three of these plot lines together. I watched this movie with my friends while we were dyeing our hair together, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs when the whole love triangle thing was happening, because I thought this movie was so boring, and I felt so bad for subjecting my friends to it. And I was glad that at least something unique and interesting was happening, like how often do we have DCOM thruples? But overall, this movie was pretty boring. I'm not super into it. I'd only recommend if you're interested in Jared Padalecki's back catalog. It's probably going to go near the middle or the lower part of the ranking just because I don't have much opinions on it. Well, isn't that a pleasant amount of movies that we've just watched together? With that, we're officially done with the Zoog era. I can't believe a whole third of this list is just from one era alone. Now, you're probably looking at the runtime and going, hey, is this video over? And yeah, it is. It's over now. I know this isn't what everyone was expecting, and it's definitely not what I planned originally when I conceived of this project. But there are a few reasons why I've decided to split things off here. One, I did not realize how much work this video was going to end up being. I know, funny enough, I thought reviewing 100 movies was just gonna be easy, I guess. And two, because, and I wasn't going to mention this originally, but some other YouTuber who was much, much bigger than me happened to release a video with the exact same marketing and the exact same premise as this video was originally going to be, just 48 hours earlier than I had originally planned to. I've been working on this video for literal years. I've mentioned it briefly, but I actually had the idea for this video around 2020, but I didn't really start becoming a YouTuber till like 2021, and here we are 3 years later, and I'm barely just getting a third of it out right now. Since I'm a small channel and I don't have as many resources as many bigger YouTubers do, it takes me a lot longer to work on projects like this. And I highly recommend you go check out that video if you haven't yet, because I haven't been able to watch it because I've been working on this video, but it's probably really good, and I'm actually really excited to watch it because I really want to hear what other people have to say about DCOMs. But because of that, instead of trying to like break my back and stress over making a video with the exact same like title and thumbnail essentially, because they beat me to the punch, I just decided, fuck it, I'm splitting it in thirds. I'm gonna put me first, and I'm actually gonna spend time with my family and, you know, open presents under the Christmas tree instead of just sitting at my desk hunched over in shrimp position. Because you know what? I deserve it. And there's really no point in essentially nuking the video from the start by just having it have the exact same marketing as that other video, which is already way more successful than any other video I've ever made on my channel so far. So we're splitting it in thirds, and once I release all 3 parts, then I will release the whole video all together. By that point, it might feel a little more couth to upload the video with the original title and thumbnail I had planned. I'm just trying to protect my peace at the end of the day, and that is gonna work the best for me, so I really hope you guys don't mind. I genuinely appreciate all of the love and feedback I've been getting on this project as I've been working on it, and I'm so glad that so many people were interested and invested in me finishing this project. I'm so honored and thankful, like genuinely, I can't even describe it in words, honestly. So to all of those who are really excited to get a 6-hour video from me, you're gonna have to wait a few more months. I hope you can deal with that. I'm sorry that it ended up being this way, but also I'm kind of not. Like, it's just relieved a huge weight off of my chest. What I think a lot of people don't realize is that it is basically impossible to get videos of this length out in a timely manner without some sort of help with money or with editors. And I have neither of those. It's literally just me. Plus, I'm a full-time college student, and at the end of the day, that matters to me more than making these silly little videos. Like, I'd rather do well on my exams and spend time with my family than get 100,000 views on YouTube. But genuinely, I've had so much fun making this video. Like, I have been excited to watch the movies and to start editing the project. This has been such a fun endeavor for me, and I'm really glad that people actually care and want to watch it. I just don't want to play the YouTube numbers game as hard as I probably wanted to a few months ago. So, protecting my peace, I hope you protect yours. Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for watching. Part 2 will be coming out much sooner than you probably think it will, or maybe much later than you think it will. Who knows? It depends on what your opinions are on things. Again, thank you so much for watching. I literally couldn't be doing this without you guys, and I am so glad that you've watched all the way to the end and that you care enough about my channel to watch this video, even after somebody else has already done this project. Also, Caitlin McKillop did this like years ago, and her video is great. I would really recommend checking it out if it was split into 3 parts, I think. And shout out to Big Joel. You really helped me out here, buddy. And with that, I'm going to leave and go eat some Christmas cookies. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.